I wrote this song just for you, so I could demonstrate how beautiful I sound using pitch correction software, but I can't sing a note above F sharp or keep my voice from going out of tune. Yet here I am still sounding like a pro. But pretty soon the truth will really show, and you will see that I have not been doing fine. I've relied on Melodyne just to keep from making all of your ears bleed. 'Cause this is what I sound like when I'm left all on my own. I sing horrifying harmonies and sometimes quarter tones, but I always know that if I need some vocals on my song, my computer keeps my notes from sounding wrong.
In this video, I'm going to peel the curtain back a little bit on modern vocal production techniques and show you exactly how I was able to create the track that you just heard. And throughout this whole process, I'm hoping to really reinforce 3 concepts. First is I really want you to know how much work goes into something that sounds this way. If you're not comfortable with studio work, or if you're not familiar with recording a cappella, you might be surprised at how much work and effort actually goes into creating something that might sound so simple. Secondly, I'd like to demonstrate some very common sense and practical mixing techniques, concepts that you can use on your own mixes at home when you're trying to make your vocals sound better. And lastly, I'm trying to drive home the point that these tools are extremely powerful and potent, and they can transform an average performance into something spectacular. Just like a lot of Instagram models are photoshopped to look that way, and in real life it's something completely different, a lot of singers use these kind of techniques to sound way better than are humanly possible. And it's good to keep a skeptical eye and ear out for these kind of things happening, because this technology is omnipresent. If I can do it here in my home, then obviously the pros are using stuff like this as well when it's needed. So today we are working in Ableton Live 10, but before we do any recording or producing, there's a few steps we have to take care of first. First, you have to write a piece, and then you can arrange it. Then you can record it, and then you can produce it. Those would be the 4 steps that I look at. As far as writing, well, to write this, since I knew it was an a cappella piece, I wanted to write it with my voice. Why would I want to write it on my guitar or a piano? I wanted it to be singable. So for me personally, I know about the highest note I can comfortably sing is this high B, and where I'd rather be singing is about E. That's a note, those are notes I can hit comfortably, kind of, and with some power. So when I was just writing melodies and lyrics, it all ended up kind of settling in that area, and then I just settled on, okay, this will be the key of E major. So once I had my melody, I wrote this song just for you, it was time to put some chords to it. So this is where the arrangement process starts, but this is still kind of writing. We need to have chords that fit my melody. And since my melody was all in the key of E major, I just picked bread and butter, garden variety chords of the diatonic E major scale. And that's where most of those chords come from. So there's a million chords that would have worked for this melody. I wrote this song just for you so I could demonstrate. But, you know, I could do a different chord progression. I could have started on E. I wrote this song just for you so I could demonstrate how beautiful I sound. Lots of choices, right? So the choice I picked there, basically once I had my choice in place, I liked the chords. Those were the chords that were going to dictate my arrangement. Now, as soon as I wrote my main melody, as soon as I was finished writing my melody and my lyrics, I immediately went into Reason to program in my melody, and that way I could see what my melody looked like. I used this little violin sound. You can hear it is. I wrote this song just for you so I could demonstrate. So by being able to see my notes and hear my notes, it made this next step much easier, which is arrangement. I chose a 4-part harmony. And a 4-part harmony is something that like any music major can do at the drop of a hat. But I'm not a music major. The idea is to have 4 different parts that are independent. You know, you've got a low part, you have a high part, you've got something in between, maybe something higher. And it's like 4 different characters in a play. They all have their different role to play, and very rarely does one character just disappear, right? They're always kind of visible, they're always kind of audible. And that is what a good arrangement is supposed to achieve. It's supposed to achieve, you know, independence between the voices, and it's supposed to avoid any sort of clashing. Now, if you don't know the formal rules of harmony, if you haven't been trained and had those rules reinforced like me, then do what I did and just do what sounds good. You know, if you like it the way it sounds, then it should be good enough. But there are certain rules that, you know, certain people will criticize. If you are formally trained, you might criticize my arrangement. It's fine with me. I like the way it sounds. But I will say this, when you're not well trained, having it on your computer is such an advantage. Once I had my main part written, I was able to start exploring harmonies here on the computer before I actually sang them to see if I liked them. So it would be a real pain to be singing a bunch of things that I don't like and then fixing them. Or you could just write something on your computer first and really go in there and tweak things. If you don't hear a note, if you hear a note you don't like, you can go in and fix it. This is so much easier than writing on the page. You know, if I'm writing on the page, I can't hear those things. I'm not good enough to keep all these harmonies in track in my head. And I certainly am not good enough of a piano player to do this all on the keyboard. The guitar is certainly not the instrument you want to be writing a 4-part harmony on just because of its geometry. So to me, this is about as easy as it gets when it comes to writing a 4-part harmony, is being able to write it on the computer, hit play, listen to what you just wrote, go in there and change notes, and really independently keep track of all 4 parts. So that way, before you actually hit record, you know that it sounds okay. Now, to handle the recording part of everything, well, that was very simple. I just sat right here, I sang right into this microphone, and yeah, it's not the perfect environment. This isn't an isolation booth. There's noise around. The computer is right there, so you can hear the fan in the background. But you know what? Sometimes good enough is good enough. And as long as you cut out the dead space or use a gate, and we'll talk about some of that stuff, you don't always need these pristine vocal environments. I think that this day and age, even without, you know, noise removal software, if you've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of that background noise kind of just goes away. Now, if this was a professional project, if this was for a movie or a commercial or something really, you know, where they were expecting professionalism, yeah, I would want an isolation booth. I'd want a quieter environment. But you know, you can't always have that luxury, and you shouldn't let that hold you back from doing something like this anyways. And like I said, this isn't the best treated place, but especially right next to a computer fan, but I still think it works. All right, now we can get into the actual production and mixing part of things. Let's take a listen to just my main vocal part, all on its own. Here's one little excerpt of my main vocal part.
Or keep my voice from going out of tune.
Here it is recorded once, and what I have opted to do for every one of these tracks is I have opted to double track it. So I sang the exact same part again, and you can see this is a different performance. This note sang a little bit late. Here it ends a little bit differently. They're not identical. And if I play these both at the same time, you should hear that slop. You should hear the difference between these two. It might not sound that good.
Or keep my voice from going out of tune.
There's moments where the pitch matches, and it's actually kind of nice. It creates this phasey, nice little twinkling thing. But you know, the other parts are kind of harsh to my ear when it does that. Listen again.
Or keep my voice from going.
The timing, when the timing's not perfect, you know, that creates an issue. So why did I unison double it when unison doubling can create so many issues? Well, I knew I was able to make it perfect afterward. So this was one of those things that normally, if I didn't have any tricks up my sleeve, I would say don't unison double your vocal track. Maybe do like a triple track or a quad track. That'll actually even things out. It'll kind of add in more slop, but it averages out to something better. When you just have 2 tracks like this, though, it's very, very particular, and you have to be very careful when you're doing a unison double. One of the quickest things we can do, though, because right now, both of these tracks are being played in the center. So you're hearing the actual discrepancies between those two. They're kind of being processed together and merged together through the same speaker. But if I pan them hard left and right, okay, so here's what it sounds like with them in the center.
Or keep my voice from going out of tune.
Now all I'll do is pan one hard to the left and pan the other one hard to the right, and listen to how much better it's going to sound.
Or keep my voice from going out of tune.
You may not have noticed the out of tuneness because they're hitting each ear independently and they don't have a chance to actually interact with each other and create that, interference. So you're not hearing this effect if you're on a mono speaker, or if you have you're going to have two speakers, headphones or two different speakers to hear this effect. But immediately, just by hard panning left and right, I've immediately made just this one vocal track sound better.
Or keep my voice from going out of tune.
I also think that this hard pan left and right is way more interesting than if we had decided to just do a single track in the center. This doesn't have a...
Or keep my voice from going.
That doesn't have dimension to me. That just sounds like one guy singing, where all of a sudden my double track spreads things out, starting to sound a little bit more a cappella. So I took a similar approach to every other part that I wrote here. Here is my high part, for example. Here are two different independent tracks that I sang separately.
A note above F sharp.
And once again, I decided to pan these hard left and hard right. So it kind of clears up and cleans it up just a little bit.
A note above F sharp.
But once they were panned hard left and right, I didn't want them to take up the exact same space as my other groupings, as my other parts. So what I did is I grouped them together. And then I kind of moved this whole thing over to just one side. So that basically means that there's a lot of that high part on the right speaker. There's just a little bit of that high part on my left speaker. And once again, just trying to create dimension, trying to create space, trying to just not make it sound like a flat production, but maybe like there's actual 8 people around you singing. So let's listen to that where it's just kind of mostly panned to one side.
A note above F sharp.
And then combining that with my main tracks again. Here's what that sounds like.
A note above F sharp.
So you can see it's starting to come together, whereas if I played these tracks all in the center speaker with no mixing, let's listen to that same performance.
A note above F sharp.
I know which one I'd rather have. I'd rather have them split out like that. I'd rather have that space. The only tracks I didn't pan hard left and right are my bass tracks.
A note above F sharp.
I actually left those in the center just like so because I have a tendency to like to keep my bass in the center in mono. This is a pretty common mixing principle, and it's not a rule by any chance. I just didn't see the need to pan these out left and right like this.
A note above F sharp.
And especially because I'm trying to create space, I think it would be nice to have something that's just solid there in the center, that low, deep, resonant voice, and I don't mind the phasiness that comes along with it. Also keeping in mind this all will get pitch corrected, so a lot of these mistakes will go away after that pitch correction occurs. So for me, the next step is to continue mixing things without using any effects. I don't want to add any effects yet, just get the fundamentals of the mix figured out. And we've already started splitting things left and right. We've already started balancing things. So for each one of these tracks, I'm just going to group them together. Here's my main track as one grouping, and now I can take my main vocals and listen to them all on their own. And what I'm going to do is just balance this mix, all right? I'm going to pan things left and right, and more importantly, I'm going to try to get my parts to blend with each other. I do want this main part to be louder than everything else.
Yet here I am.
That's the part I want you to sing along to. If my bass part is louder than everything else, think of how weird this song would sound.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
I don't want that. I want this melody to really be sticking out. This main melody is the most important one.
Yet here I am.
So I'm going to try to balance everything around that. I'll try to make sure that that stays prominent and none of those other voices dominate that voice. All the other voices just kind of sit around my main voice. Now, to do this mix, I don't want my headphones on. I really prefer my monitors. So I'm going to take the headphones off, take a little bit of a break, mix this to my taste, and then we'll come back. All right, so we have spent some time mixing this, and once again, there are no effects here, just simple panning and mixing, and that's it. And take a listen to how much better this already sounds than what we were working with before.
Sing a note above F sharp.
You can still hear the out of tuneness, yes, but at least there's some clarity there, some crispness there, whereas if I did something like this instead, let's flip this to mono so there's no stereo width at all. Listen to this.
Sing a note above F sharp.
So hopefully you hear that stereo field really, really helps out. And just by, spending a little bit of time with just the basic mix, you should be able to make a lot of improvement. Now we can finally start pitch correcting this. I'm going to use Melodyne, and I kind of insist you put Melodyne at the beginning of your vocal chain. If you put in effects and then add a Melodyne unit, well, all those effects will kind of be baked into Melodyne and you won't be able to kind of tweak them later on. So I do highly suggest you, at the very beginning of your chain, you start using Melodyne, and then you hit transfer, record that audio in here.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
And that's a pretty bad performance right there. But what Melodyne does is it shows you exactly the notes you sang, and this little squiggly red line, this little one that's going up and down, it's waving around here, and then it scoops way up here. That's what my voice actually did. That's tracking my actual pitch. And as you can see, and as you can hear,
but pretty soon the truth will.
It's not controlled, and it's also not on tune, or in tune. That's what these big blobs are, averages of the note that Melodyne thinks I'm trying to sing. So what I'm going to do here, it sounds like my melody should be E to D sharp, back to E, and then to F sharp, and that's the note I literally can't hit an F sharp without hurting myself. So what we can do is we can move these notes after we've sang it. Here was this note that was supposed to be an E, but I'm a little flat on it. I almost hit it. I could move it way up here to F sharp. I could move it way up to, way up here to A. However, do you notice the farther away I get from where I started, it's starting to sound weirder and weirder, like if I pitch it down here? It doesn't sound like a human anymore. So with an acapella performance, you need to be in the general ballpark. You need to be within a half step or a whole step for this to work. But, I mean, any decent singer should be singing within a half step of their desired target note. If you can't sing a half step that's pretty important stuff for any decent singer. The important thing to note, though, is the less pitch correction you do, the more human it will sound. So for many of these tracks, I tried to take a light touch, but often, because there's so much going on, I was able to take a pretty heavy-handed brushstroke to these and actually kind of over-auto-tune it.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
So that's already a little bit better just because I've moved things around, but I hate all this craziness in my voice. So what we can do is we can actually get rid of all these little modulations, just average it out a little bit, and let's maybe find some ones that we can really iron out, like this one.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
I hate this word, truth. You hear that word, truth?
But pretty soon the truth will.
So that note, true, that's one giant sweep. So once again, what I could do is I could just kind of even this out.
Truth.
And it's supposed to be an F sharp. The truth.
The truth will really show. The truth will really show.
Now it sounds robotic, but I'll be honest with you, I think in the context of the mix with all those other vocals going on, I'm pretty sure a little instance of roboticness won't pop out to the ear. It won't be noticeable. So basically, this process of going in here and distinctly editing every single part, that's the step that you need to do to make it sound perfect. So here's what that sounds like when it's actually melodyned, and let's bring back the double track now so you can hear what they both sound like.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
And I really need you to hear what I did to this one. I mean, listen to how this track originally started without Melodyne. Listen to this.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
I mean, I'm not even hitting the note. I was running out of breath. It was hurting my muscles. And I was trying. I was not trying to sing poorly. I just can't sing this high. So in that case, I would rather sing the wrong note well and then just Melodyne it into place than crack my voice. You can't Melodyne a cracked voice, but you can sing the wrong note and move it into place. So once again, listen to what this sounds like before Melodyne.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
After Melodyne.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
All right, a little bit of funkiness there on the Melodyne. I probably could have done a better job, but it sounds way better than where it started. So I've gone through every individual track and literally Melodyned every single note that offended me. That is maybe the most time-consuming thing you can do as a music editor in your DAW, that and drum processing. But it also cleaned up not just the pitches, but the timing. And like I said, to not sound sloppy, that's extremely important, that all our notes end at the right time and everything is just copacetic and nice and tidy. So here is all the Melodyne on, just that's the only effect we're hearing right now is the proper mix, but with Melodyne.
A note above F, yet here I am still sounding like a pro. But pretty soon the truth will really show.
I mean, you hear how nice that sounds. It sounds...
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
As bad as those original tracks are, I don't hear anything bad in that. So I actually double dipped on the pitch correction, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Autotune is a program that normally just catches your note and then averages it out, and I decided to throw a version of Autotune onto every single track as well. I figured, why not? I wanted it to sound perfect. So I opted for the Nectar audio plugin from Isotope, and this is one of those ones I got with their big bundle when I paid for it, and it works just like Autotune. It catches the note,
but pretty soon the truth will...
And let's boost this up a little bit so we can hear it. But it catches the note and it just averages it out to the closest note.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
And what I can do is I could really crank this up. 100% strength, very quick speed, and you'll hear it just becomes the T-Pain thing you're familiar with.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
So you hear that little warble in there. I don't want that in my actual, acapella performance. But I did want a much subtler version of that. So I took quite a bit of, the strength off, and I added a little speed so it doesn't kick in right away.
But pretty soon the truth will really show.
Far more natural, and I had every single one of those tracks doing that extra bit of pitch correction on there just to give it, just to iron things out even more. The last effect that I added on here for each one of these tracks individually was a gate. I did want to make sure that at no point in time did we hear anything ringing out that shouldn't be ringing out. So like right here, let's listen to this track without a gate on.
Yet here I am still sounding like a pro.
So I'm not sure if you heard really closely, there's like a little lip smack, I can hear the metronome clicking back there, stuff that I don't want. So the gate basically just says, hey, anything under a certain volume, we're just gonna, basically turn the volume all the way down so we don't hear that at all. So this should be nice and crisp now.
Pro.
And sure enough, I don't hear anything else in there. So putting a gate on and make sure it's well adjusted to clean things up, it keeps that computer noise away, it keeps any excessive noise away, and it's a really key part to making it sound like a clean, crisp track. We're almost done, but one of the really important steps here is to take each one of our groups, each one of our parts, and to compress each one, and then to add equalization to each one. So let's listen to our main part all on its own. It sounds pretty good. We already know it sounds pretty good, but by compressing it, we're going to kind of even out the dynamic range. So if I got too loud in some areas, and you can even see this, like maybe this note right here was really loud, but this one was really quiet. So what compression's going to do is it's going to kind of squash this one down a little bit more so it matches this one, right? It just kind of evens out the higher ones. So for me, what I like to do with a compressor is I like to put one maybe kind of quietly in front where it's kind of catching almost everything that happens. So almost every note being sung will be hit by this first compressor.
I wrote this song.
But it's not a very strong compression. It's the ratio is only 1.7. That can be considered strong if you're working with vocals, but it's, ultimately it's a pretty weak ratio.
I wrote.
And then I have another compressor after that, much harsher, much higher ratio there.
I wrote.
That catches the louder stuff, and that way anything above that gets pushed down even more. So that's what that sounds like with just compression.
I wrote this song.
Now for EQ, this is a very advanced topic, but for me personally, I think that everything should kind of live in its own EQ space and it should sound good. Here, I decided to actually carve out most of the most important frequencies in my voice, which is like the 1K range, because I've got so much going on here. There's so many vocals singing. I thought this 1K range could be kind of, better used for maybe one of the other parts, but it sounds kind of funny on its own. Listen.
I wrote this song just for you so I could demonstrate.
Here's the EQ turned off.
I wrote this song.
Back on.
I wrote this song.
So you can see it's like I've created more space in this middle zone here. This is about 700 hertz to about 1,000, 1,100, something like that. 1,000, 2,000. So there's a little pocket there. And now I can kind of use that pocket to maybe fill in some of my other voices. Like here, take a look at my middle ranged voice. My middle ranged voice fits in there right well. I got rid of all the low stuff here. Why do I need low stuff in there? Well, I really don't. That's going to be for my bass. My bass will live over here. So this little area right here is where my middle voice lives.
I wrote wrote this song just for you so I could demonstrate.
And it sounds kind of boxy, right? This isn't a great sounding thing all on its own.
I wrote this song.
But in combination with my first one,
I wrote this song just for you.
They kind of have their own little home there. So I'm just going to show you the EQ curves that I made for each one of these, and that way you can kind of, see it on your own and make up your own judgments, on why I may have used that EQ curve and why it looks that way. So my main one here was just that guy. You can see I carved out a little bit at 1K. My high one, I didn't need much here. I kept the 1K, got rid of a lot of the low, and even got rid of some of the high end because I seem to have this crackling hissing in my high register.
I wrote this song just for you.
And I didn't want this stuff. Let's boost this so you can hear it.
I wrote this song.
Like, that was just too harsh for me. So I brought that down a lot to kind of clean that up. My mid-range one, like I said, kind of lives in that 1K range, and I left the high end. And then you can guess from my bass, look at my bass curve here, really boosting the stuff at around 100 hertz.
I wrote this.
And why is it at 100 hertz? Well,
I wrote this.
the E note that I'm singing is an 82 hertz, so that lives right about here. And I know that's the kind of stuff I wanted to be boosting, is that blah. So lots of boost in the bass area there, and then carving things out for the rest of it. That way this voice really is kind of surviving only on its bass frequencies. So this is great. We've got our EQ, we've got our mix, we've got our pitch correction. Everything is good to go. Let's hit play and listen to what our glorious arrangement sounds like.
But I can't sing a note above F sharp, or keep my voice from going out of tune.
Perfect. I love the way that sounds. Now, you could leave it here. You could say, I'm done. You love the way that crisp vocal sounds.
Yet here I am.
I personally was like imagining that really, I don't know, I always thought it was like annoying, that High School Musical Glee kind of music and the big smiles and stuff like that. And I imagine them in the gymnasium. Oh, we're going to bust out into song in the lunchroom, which never happens. So I put gymnasium reverb on there. For my returns here, I just threw a gymnasium and a vocal hall. And a lot of these tracks, I just cranked it up there, just gave, some reverb to some of those tracks, some reverb to the other ones, and adding reverb to it. Now take a listen, adds another dimension there. Another
a note above F sharp, or keep my voice from going out of tune.
Totally preference. Do you like it with the reverb, so it sounds like you're in the lunchroom with them, or do you like this crisp?
A note above F sharp.
Depending on the production, depending on what you're making and why you're making it, one of these is the right answer and one of these is the wrong answer. I personally liked it with the reverb, so I kept it with the reverb. And that literally concludes the production of this song. I did a little bit more, right? We added some snaps, which was really easy. Snapping, adding reverb. I added a tambourine. I added an ooh, a single ooh. This guy right here, it's not good. Heavily melodined, right, to make that sound presentable. After this, it was just a matter of mastering it, which I don't have much advice on. I ran it through Ozone and I mastered it. But everything else was way more important, getting this entire arrangement put together. So I hope this really demonstrates to you all a little bit of information on how you can go about doing this yourself, and more importantly, giving you a better perspective on what is realistic these days. What can you get away with as an amateur singer in your basement? Because, like I said, if I have access to this equipment, then obviously the professionals do too, and you're probably hearing it more than you might assume. You're probably hearing heavily processed Melodyne vocals a little bit more than you might assume. It's like Photoshop for your voice, and use it when you can. I think it's a great tool. I love to use it. It empowers me to use vocals for my own song. It allows me to sing my own parts and not worry about it. But also be aware that, a lot of people could abuse this and make themselves appear much better than they really are for some reason. So, you take some and you lose some. Every bit of technology has a dark side to it. I personally think this is awesome technology, and I love using it, and I recommend you use it too, and that way you can get some vocals on your own song. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did enjoy this video, you can consider checking out my Patreon page. The only reason these lessons exist are because of wonderful people that have signed up for my Patreon and donated to keep me making lessons. So there are links below in the description. If you don't want to do that, though, that's fine. Just leave a like or a comment or a subscribe. All that kind of stuff really helps me out. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.